Here are some more Asian book recommendations. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So a couple of days ago, I've uploaded a video where I read a lot of Asian books, and it was an Asian book recommendations video. And I received a lot of good feedback on that video. A lot of people haven't heard of the books that I was talking about, or they heard about it and they never got around to adding it to their TBRs, but now they actually want to read them. And for me as a book influencer, I feel very proud of it when somebody actually goes and adds it to their TBRs or adds it to their carts or borrows it from the library and actually reads the book, because it just feels like I'm doing some part in the bookish community where I'm helping uplifting voices and also doing my part in supporting diverse voices and also people of color voices. So for this video, I'm doing Asian book recommendations again, because that video that I uploaded is actually a video that I filmed in July. So since July, I have read a lot more Asian books that I want to bring to your attention because they're just so precious and they're gems. So for the first book that I have to recommend to you, or the first Asian book that I have read, is The Last Story of Mina Lee by Nancy Juyeon Kim. And now this book is just been released in September, so it's a fairly recent book, and it's actually been picked as a Reese book club pick. So it's Reese Witherspoon's, the famous American actress, book club pick, and it just brought to my awareness that this book has to be somewhat of good quality and somewhat good and telling a story that everyone kind of needs to hear. So this book follows a girl named Mina Lee. She was born in Korea, but during the Korean War, she kind of lived through a traumatizing life where she lost both her parents and she was separated from her family. And then she had to live her life as kind of like an orphan. She had to take care of herself, and then she grew up there. And then in her adulthood, she decided to immigrate to America, to a foreign country where she knows nothing about. She doesn't know the language, she doesn't speak the language, and she is just trying to find some jobs so that she can make ends meet and survive in America. And this is kind of a story where it's telling from two different times points. One is Mina's like childhood slash adulthood slash before she gave birth to her daughter. And then the other part is actually from her daughter's perspective. It's about her life while she was growing up in America as a Korean American, and how she struggled a lot to understand her mother, who was an immigrant. It's the struggle between understanding your immigrant parents and understanding their thoughts and values towards things that you might not understand simply because you grew up in a more Americanized or Western culture. And this story was also talking about how Mina Lee one day disappeared, and it's about her daughter Margot trying to piece together of like, where did her mom go, who are the people in her life that could have caused her to disappear, and if she is still alive or dead. I unexpectedly cried, and it caught me at the weirdest moment where I was listening to the audiobook and the scene was playing out and I just bawled, and I was sobbing and I was kind of like choking up. So if you guys are interested in reading about an immigrant life story slash a mother-daughter relationship that is broken, then definitely check out this one. I can't recommend it enough. So the next book that I want to recommend to you is actually a middle grade novel called 3 Keys by Kelly Yang. And now Kelly Yang debuted or had a book out last year called Front Desk, and that was a middle grade novel too. So I read Front Desk in the beginning of like May or June this year. I forget actually which month it was. And I thought this middle grade novel was just going to be about a Chinese immigrant family moving to America and realizing that America is a lot tougher than what people thought it would be. And it was very tough and hard to hear. So 3 Keys is actually the second book in that series, and I was so excited to read it. So thank you so much to Scholastic Canada for actually sending me an ARC to read, because I absolutely adored it and I was so excited to read it. So 3 Keys focuses on the same Chinese immigrant family that moved to America and kind of was shell-shocked at how different culture was and how different people acted towards them, and how people kind of like lose respect for immigrants because they don't understand their cultures and they don't understand the languages that they speak. So this book also focused a lot on the current immigration issues that are happening in America between the border of Mexico and America, and how it is kind of like the new immigration laws, and new laws are separating families and making it harder for people to settle down and become an American citizen. And it happens to a friend of the main character where her father is actually separated from her family and she just wants to see her father. So for those people who kind of think that middle grade novels are babyish or childish and the writing might be a little bit too easy to comprehend, so definitely overlook that fact that the writing might be simple, but the issues are definitely not simple. So the next Asian recommendation that I have for you is actually South Asia, and this features in an Indian family. So this book is actually called The Destination Wedding by Diksha Basu, and Diksha Basu actually wrote a very popular book called The Windfall that I have on my shelves that I haven't read yet because I just want to savor it. I want to have some time to read it, so I just put that one off. But when I saw The Destination Wedding available at my library, I borrowed the audiobook and I decided to listen to it. It was a fun ride. So this book is about Indian American, and she doesn't know which culture she belongs to because she might be too Western for the Indian culture life, but then she also might be too Indian for the American culture life. But she thinks that her life would be miraculously put in place, or she feels that she'll belong more if she travels to a wedding in India. Behind the scenes, she also knows that her divorced parents are going through their own specific mental breakdowns, and her mother is getting over her husband or her ex by dating a new boyfriend who's more American, and then her father is actually trying to get back into the dating scene. He sees the opportunity to go to India to meet with a matchmaker, so hopefully that he can find another wife. It was kind of like a roller coaster of emotions and also dramatic scenes. So if you guys are a big fan of plots with many characters and with many plot lines, then definitely you'll enjoy this one. So the next book that I have to recommend is Vanessa Yu's Magical Paris Tea Shop by Roselle Lim, and this is the second book in her series, or this is the second book following her debut, which is Natalie's Tan of Book of Luck and Fortune. So this book is about a girl who is named Vanessa Yu, and Vanessa Yu has a special magical power that has been passed down from generation to generations to females in her family lineage, and basically she has the power of telling the future. So if you guys are familiar with the TV show That's So Raven, she experiences visions when she drinks tea. So when she drinks tea, a powerful vision comes to mind and she can't help but actually purge it out and tell whoever's in front of her the future of their lives. She realizes that she definitely needs to do training. So she goes to Paris with her aunt, who has a magical Paris tea shop that tells fortunes, how to properly train herself so that she can control her visions and not blurt out visions whenever she has them and effectively ruin people's lives. And this is kind of like a story of like a Superman origin story. So if you guys are familiar with Marvel movies, you would know that superheroes tend to either accept their power or they think that their powers are the worst things that could happen to them. And this just so happens to be Vanessa thinking that her powers are the worst things that can happen to her. So I definitely recommend this book if you want to have a story set in Paris. It was so beautiful to read and all the descriptions were spot on. So the next book that I want to recommend is Recipe for Persuasion by Sonali Dev. And now this is a South Asian romance recommendation following the book of Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors that came out last year, also by Sonali Dev. So I absolutely loved Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors. It was one of my favorite reads. It was so emotional, it was so juicy, it was so dramatic. It was a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. But Recipe for Persuasion is something that you probably already know. It's a retelling of Persuasion, the story. Now for Persuasion, I actually never read the classic. I also didn't read the classic of Pride and Prejudice, but I'm very familiar with the plotline of Pride and Prejudice because of Bridget Jones' Diaries. But for Persuasion, I was less familiar with that plotline, so I can't say if this retelling does the classic justice. So for Recipe for Persuasion, it's about a daughter of a Michelin star chef that owns a Indian restaurant that cooks beautiful dishes and things like that. But her father passed away, and then now she's in charge of that restaurant, and she feels so much guilt over the fact of her father's unprecedented suicide that she feels that she needs to continue the legacy, so she does whatever she has to do to keep the business alive. And when there are no customers showing up to the store, her best friend actually suggests her to go to audition a cooking show so that she could bring publicity to the restaurant. And the cooking show is actually a chef partnered up with a celebrity. She is partnered up with none other than the very world famous FIFA star, and also just so happens to be her high school boyfriend and her one true love. And now they are partnered up together to compete on this cooking show and to raise awareness about the restaurant. And this is a second chance romance story as well, so you get to learn more about like these two characters that broke up one day, and it was just so painful to watch, and lots of misunderstandings and also miscommunications as well. This book also talked heavily about our main female character's relationship with her mother. Our main female character resenting her mother a lot because she sees that her mother abandoned the family and left her husband to die in America. So it's very heartbreaking to read about. So if you guys are in for a very emotional romance journey, then definitely check this one out. So for the next book I'm going to talk about is A Sweet Mess by J.C. Lee. And for this book I also talked about in my August wrap, but I still want to put it in this recommendations video. But this book is about a Korean American bakery store owner, and she specializes in all things baked. So there are lots of mentions of like sweet buns, cakes, cupcakes, and other delicious treats. So if you guys are hungry, I recommend bringing a snack with you when you're reading this book, because you will be craving for all things baked after reading this book or during reading this book. So when a bad review hits the newspapers, her store business actually starts tanking and her customers are not coming anymore because of this world famous food critic who actually gave a poor review to the bakery. And when she hunts down the person who gave her the bad review, she realizes that it is actually her one-night stand from a year ago, and where she had this amazing spark and connection with, but somehow they just couldn't match up at that time. So when they finally meet again, he realizes that he has made a personal mistake because she actually gave him the wrong cake, and then he unfairly judged her business on that wrong cake. So he immediately feels bad. So they hatch a plan to save the business. And the plan is for her to appear on a cooking show so that she can raise awareness about the bakery. And this book kind of took along the journey of going to that cooking show, which is kind of like a road trip romance too. So it's a second chance road trip romance. So the next book that I want to talk about is one of my favorite middle grade novels of this year, and I've read a couple already this year that are top of my faves, but this one was a book that I wanted to hold in my hands and kind of clutch it really tightly because it was so stinking adorable and so cute. But this book is called Keep It Together, Keiko Carter by Debbie Michiko Florence. And now this book is about a Japanese American kid who has her friendships with her best friends, but she realizes that life is quickly changing in grade 7 and her best friends might not want to be best friends with each other, and she's kind of like the glue that kind of sticks them together. So when one of her best friends suggests them to have a goal of having a boyfriend for the year, she's freaking out that there's so many changes happening and she is trying to cope with it. But what happens when she starts having a crush on someone she should definitely not have, and when her two best friends are actually fighting against each other? So this book was so freaking adorable. It was so cute. I cannot recommend it enough. And I've talked so much about it on my Instagram, and especially in my Instagram stories, and I was recommending it, and a lot of my friends actually picked up the book because of it. So I was very happy, and they actually read it in one sitting too, because it was just such a cute story that you just kind of fly through. And I've actually talked to Debbie on Instagram as well. I've connected with her. I gushed about her book to her, and it was just fantastic. She's a wonderful, sweet person, and her second book is actually coming next year in August 2021, but I am desperate for an arc of it. So the last book that I want to talk about for this video is actually K-Pop Confidential by Stephen Lee. And now this book is a book that was sent to me from Scholastic Canada, so I'm very excited to talk about it because it was such a great book. So if you are a fan of K-pop, like you can tell that I am a fan of K-pop, then you'll definitely enjoy this one. So this one is about a Korean American teen who is supposed to be focusing on her studies, but she decides to upload a video and she auditions for a spot in this K-pop trainee program. And it's like an international calling from one of the biggest K-pop music companies in Seoul, South Korea. And they're doing an international calling for auditions. And they see our main female character's audition tape and they are absolutely in love with her. So they decide to actually fly her out to South Korea so that she can take part in this rigorous training to become a K-pop trainee, so that she can have hopes of debuting as one of the members in a very big girls group. And this is the story of kind of her figuring out like balancing between her American culture and also her Korean culture, and as well as persuading her very strict Korean parents that she wants to follow her dream of actually singing and not playing instruments and going to school and following a very traditional path. And there was a lot of moments where kind of like it touched upon like the relationship between the mother and the daughter once again, and how they don't understand each other and they're trying their best to understand each other because they love each other dearly. And it was so emotional. I cried a lot. Then they also touched upon like the K-pop trainee life, which is like not something that like I'm very familiar with because I've never experienced it before, obviously, but it's something that I'm aware of because I'm such a big fan of K-pop that I've done my research. I know how in order to become a K-pop idol, you have to do so many things. You have to listen to your record label. You have to do all these things in order to finally debut. And even after debut, your life is not easy and you're constantly dealing with criticism from everyone around the world and also from everyone in the industry. So this book did a really good job at touching upon these things and also talking about behind the scenes. So if you're a K-pop fan, you'll definitely enjoy this book. I loved it so much, and Steven is a very nice person on Instagram and I love it. So definitely go check this book out. But anyways, that is it for all my Asian book recommendations I have for you this time around. So hopefully in the next video, I can give you more. I'm always looking for more Asian voices and own voice novels too. So hopefully you guys can add some of these books to your TBR. Bye.